A lot of your parents' old tips on money do not work anymore in today's economy because things have changed. Now, to take control of your money, you don't need an economics degree from Harvard. You can pay off debt, start to invest, even accumulate over $1 million and spend that money on the things you love if you keep it simple. But there's just one catch. You have to avoid the 7 money mistakes that cost people hundreds of thousands of dollars. But after watching this video, you won't make the same mistakes. Let's get started with mistake number 1, relying on willpower instead of automation. Now, I want to tell you that there are actual real articles that actual human beings wrote about how to save money. Separate your 2-ply toilet paper, take short, cold showers, and cut your own hair. Are you freaking serious? That's not the life for me. And if you don't want to do that, I want to show you how you can actually save money without guilt, frustration, confusion, or constantly being bombarded by terrible money advice that makes you play small. People will tell you, keep a budget, as if you have to track every single line item, and then what? What are you supposed to do with that information? Or cut back. Cut back on lattes, cut back on jeans, cut back on cars, cut back on vacation, cut back. And maybe, just maybe, when you're 95 years old, you will be allowed to spend your money. None of this advice actually applies in the real world, but frugalistas keep touting it like it's their religion. Probably the biggest rallying cry for frugality experts is that you should cut back on your morning coffee. Every day, $5 a day adds up. You've definitely seen a chart like this. If you save $2 a day by making coffee at home, you'll save $62 a month, which equals around $700 a year. And properly invested, that will turn into $10,000 in 10 years. Why doesn't this work? Because we have to consciously make this decision every single day. Now, for a lot of people, probably you watching this video, the single only joy you have in the morning is going to get your morning coffee. And now these frugality experts are asking you to use your limited willpower every single morning, every day, forever. And what these frugality people are not taking into account is that every decision we make not to buy something, not to consume that, is an active decision we have to make. It depletes our willpower, and the result looks something like this. Yes, your motivation starts high, you're pumped, but then you quickly realize that cutting your spending by 50% is a lot. It's a drastic change. Most people become unmotivated and they start spending again. By the time you're back to your old spending habits, you get a wave of inspiration to keep going and try again, only to once again fall back into that unmotivated territory. Even if you're successful cutting back on your coffee, the vast majority of people will not invest the money they've saved. You've skipped morning coffee every day for 365 days. You have $730 or more. What are you going to do? Are you going to invest all that money? Almost certainly not. $2 a day, $3 a day, $5 a day actually does not add up to that much in the grand scheme of things. So what should you do instead? Well, I recommend that people set aside at least $50 every month to invest. For a lot of people, $50 is too low. Maybe it's $500, maybe it's $5,000. But what I don't want you to do is to try harder to come up with that money. In other words, it's the 25th of the month, you're sitting there looking at these bills and you're going, should I go out to dinner or should I invest this money? Wrong. You've made a mistake way in the past. Here's the mistake. For things that take a long time and require constant decisions, like investing or like buying a morning coffee, trying harder alone almost never works. Even if you can do it once or twice, it becomes mentally taxing to maintain those decisions over a long period of time. You know what's easier? Just automate it. Set up your automatic money system so you don't even have to think about it. You automatically invest every month. You automatically save every month. All your bills are automatically paid every month. Take willpower completely out of the equation. You know another thing you can do? Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. That way I can notify you next time one of my videos goes live. All right, next up, mistake number 2, buying more house than you can afford. Do you all realize that your house is going to be the single biggest purchase you ever make? Therefore, it's really important that you run the numbers before you buy a house. If you don't, you will do what most Americans do, which is to overspend on housing, especially in high cost of living cities. Now, a good guideline is that your total monthly housing costs should be no more than 28% of your gross monthly household income. Now, that number seems staggering to a lot of people. Let me break it down. When I say total monthly housing costs, what do I mean? I mean not only your mortgage, but also closing costs, interest, property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, utilities, and any additional fees like HOA fees, condo fees, etc. Remember, when I say maintenance, you also need to be planning and putting money aside for the roof repair you're going to have 12 years from now. This is what I mean by total housing costs. If you really want to be accurate, you're also factoring in the time and labor you spend going to Home Depot twice a month. All of those costs added up should be lower than 28% of your gross monthly income. Now, for most people, you can't do that, especially today with very high housing costs, especially in expensive cities. That number is very difficult to hit. So you could stretch it. You could stretch it to 30%, 32, even 33, but it starts to become very risky. It means if one of you loses your job, you could possibly lose your house. And it also means you put yourself in the situation of being house poor, which you do not want to do. Here's a quick back of the napkin little calculation that I use. Whatever the mortgage payment is, I add 50% to account for all phantom costs. So if my mortgage was $1,000 a month, the true amount is probably more like $1,500 a month. This is quite shocking to people because they literally believe that whatever they're paying every month is their total cost. Wrong. It's probably 30 to 50% higher. On top of that, I want you to understand how much of your money is going to interest. With high interest rates, even if you put down a healthy down payment, it will often take you over 20 years for you to be sending more money to your principal on your loan versus interest. That means for the first 20 or so years, you're paying more interest than you are towards the principal. Let's take an example of a couple living in a medium cost of living city and making $180,000 annually. They're doing very well. If they follow that guideline, their housing costs not to exceed 28% of their gross monthly income, they can afford a total monthly payment of $4,200. That's everything: mortgage, utilities, taxes, maintenance, fees, all of it. Like I said earlier, I assume an additional 30 to 50% on top of the mortgage payment to come up with the total cost of ownership. Now, it's not totally accurate, but it's a good guideline. It's in the universe that gets you close to understanding what you can actually expect to pay every month. For now, let's be ultra conservative. Let's assume 50% added to the mortgage. That means their monthly mortgage payment alone should be no more than $2,800. And the phantom cost per month would be around $1,400. Assuming they get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with an interest rate of 7.5%, 20% down payment, they can afford a house of around $500,000. That actually makes sense because back in the old days, it was your income multiplied by approximately 2.5, and that would be how much you could afford. Again, those rules don't necessarily apply now because things are so expensive. In this couple's case, let's say they fall in love with a house that costs $600,000. Even if they can save more to keep that down payment at 20%, their new monthly payment will now be $5,040 per month. That's $3,360 for the mortgage plus $1,680 in phantom costs. That is a difference of $840 per month. Now, let me show you something. If they instead invested that $840 a month for 30 years with a conservative 7% return, they would have over $1 million. If this couple decided to buy the $600,000 house, not only would it stretch their housing cost to about 34% of gross monthly income, but it would have also cost them $1 million. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that buying a house you can't afford can literally cost you millions of dollars over the long run. To make sure you can afford to buy, run the numbers. I don't know why this is controversial. Ramit Sethi comes online every week and says, hey guys, when you're about to spend $1 million, maybe, just maybe, you should run a few calculations. And everybody goes, F you, Ramit. You're representing the renters consortium. You must be a secret landlord. To which I always reply, I would love to bet you $1 million that I don't own any property. Guys, it's my dream that somebody takes my bet and I win $1 million. Please, somebody who genuinely believes that I'm a secret landlord, take my bet. Yes, housing is super expensive. And yes, you still need to run the numbers. If you yourself choose to stretch that number to 29% or 30% or whatever you want to stretch it to 50%, be my guest. I wouldn't do it, but if you want to do it, okay. But at least know the number. You've got to know your numbers before you go out and make the biggest purchase of your life. Most of us go buy a house with just a couple of very simplistic assumptions. Number one, buying a house is good. And number two, housing prices always go up. That's basically how we make the biggest purchase decision of our lives. And I'm begging you not to do that. You should also save a healthy down payment. I personally recommend having 20% down. Doesn't mean you have to put it down, but having 20% saved demonstrates to yourself that you can save money. And when you buy a house, that is exactly what you will need to do. If possible, and if home ownership is part of your rich life, consider running the numbers first and then deciding how it fits into your rich life. That might mean you wait a little while, invest your money, let it grow. It might mean you move to a different city. It might mean you ask yourself, is this part of our rich life? Why? What do we need? Or you consider alternative housing like a duplex, apartment, etc. Another option is to consider renting. If you run the numbers and you really do it diligently using a buy versus rent calculator, you will probably discover that in your city, it makes sense right now to rent and invest the difference. Now, again, I'm not saying everyone's going to do that, but it's something for you to consider. Remember this, rent is the maximum you'll pay, while your mortgage is the minimum you will pay. Mistake number 3, thinking you can wait to invest. One of the things that makes me die on the inside is when I see people not investing. Or sometimes they'll go, you know what? Once I pay off my house, then I'm going to start investing. I go, do you understand compounding? See, in America, most people want to have a lot of money, but you also must remember that the vast majority of Americans have never read a single book on personal finance. It's very much like the idea that people want to have a six-pack, but they don't necessarily want to go to the gym or learn how to eat properly. We procrastinate with our money because there's no real reason for us to take action today. If we don't invest today, we still have cable, we still have a roof over our head, we still have computer and TikTok, it's fine. But every year that goes by, it becomes a little harder, and then a little harder, and then a little bit more. Let's take a look at 2 different examples. Savvy Sally invests $200 a month from age 20 to 30, and then she never touches that money again. She just lets it sit in her investment account, growing. Naive Noah waits. He doesn't start investing until he's 45, at which point he invests the same $200 a month until he's 65. In other words, Savvy Sally contributes to her investments for only 10 years, while Naive Noah contributes to his for 20. Now think about that. What happens at the age of 65? Savvy Sally has $369,442 in her investment account, which is $267,000 more than Naive Noah ends up with. One more thing, just for fun. If Savvy Sally was able to invest $800 a month from age 20 to 30, and Naive Noah invested $800 a month from 45 to 65, that difference between the two would be astronomical at over $1 million. When it comes to compounding, do you see the power of time? Procrastinating costs you dearly. It's just that most of us don't know how to properly calculate that. So what should you do instead of waiting? Getting started early with investing is the most important thing you can do for your wealth. If you're in your 20s, start now. Start investing right now with whatever you can. Even $50 a month is great. And keep doing it consistently. If you're in your 30s and 40s, don't beat yourself up. Yes, the best time to invest was when you were 15, but the second best time to start investing is today. Don't get discouraged. Don't beat yourself up. Yes, you're going to have to be more aggressive with your contributions than someone in their 20s, but don't let that stop you. To see what your own investment could look like, I recommend looking up Compound Interest Calculator online and entering your numbers. Aim for at least 5 to 10% of your take-home pay. Of course, I recommend more if you can, and keep track of that number to make sure that you are investing every single month. And just try it. In the calculator, experiment with what happens if you contribute $100 a month to your investments, or $200 a month, $500 a month, or even $1,000 a month. Assume a 7% return, which automatically accounts for inflation, and you will see dramatic differences over the years. This is the kind of knowledge that I want you to have about investing today. Speaking of investing, that brings me to mistake number 4, paying a percentage to a financial advisor. If you are investing and if you choose to work with a financial advisor, please, for the love of God, do not pay a percentage-based fee. That's also called AUM, or assets under management. And if any of you have a financial advisor and you're not actually sure how you are paying them, pay attention right now. See, if you have a financial advisor, I would highly recommend you just pull up your phone right now, text them and say, hey, how am I compensating you? How do you get paid? You're going to get a return call in about 6 seconds, because financial advisors who charge AUM, they know if you're asking this question, you suddenly got really smart about compensation. See, here's how it works. If you pay a financial advisor 1% to manage your money, most people think 1%, that's not that much. Somebody pays attention to my numbers, they're keeping an eye out for me. That's not too much. Here's the surprising math. That 1% fee can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime returns. Let me show you the math. Let's say you're serious about investing. You start at the age of 20. You contribute $600 every month for 45 years until you're 65. If you pay a low 0.1% management fee and you assume a conservative 7% return that automatically accounts for inflation, you'd have about $2.14 million for retirement. But if instead you pay a financial advisor 1%, you would have way less money because that 1% fee would have cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, all going directly into your advisor's pocket. This is really important because when I go to a restaurant, I see exactly how much I'm going to pay. When I pay my personal trainer, I know exactly how much I'm going to pay. But when it comes to certain people in the financial industry, it's very unclear. What percentage? Most people don't even know what that percentage is. And even if it says it on a piece of paper, they don't understand the implications of what a 1% fee means. Because if I told you exactly how much it was going to cost you, most people would be shocked. I remember a young woman in her 30s DM'd me and asked if she was getting ripped off by her advisor, who was charging a percentage. I said, how much do you think you'll pay your advisor over the course of your lifetime? She had no idea, but she guessed 30 grand over the next 30 or so years. I ran the calculations for her. She would be paying $315,000. Now that is shocking because most of us go our entire life agonizing over how much butter costs at the grocery store and talking about bread and should we get a second Coke, but we don't realize that a 1% advisory fee is a tremendous amount of money. And there are fantastic financial advisors out there who charge an hourly or flat fee. I think that most people can manage their own money just fine. You can learn it from my book, which you can get for a flat fee or get it at a public library in chapters 3, 6, and 7. That book is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. In the book, I explain the details of which companies I recommend, which companies I myself use, and how to evaluate different types of investments. Now, of course, if you decide you want to hire a financial advisor to look over your numbers, that's fine. You can. Make sure they're a fiduciary, which means they are legally and ethically required to act in your interest, and make sure they charge an hourly or flat project fee, never a percentage. You can look for flat fee advisors at napfa.org. or check out our sponsor Facet at facet.com/Ramit for a flat fee membership option. Mistake number 5, stop debating all the details that won't make a difference. Go on any credit card forum and people are asking the most arcane, obscure questions. Should I use the Chase Sapphire Reserve? Because I know I can get a 75,000 point bonus. But what about if I go to Sardinia? Because if I take the route that goes east, I think it could actually make the sunrise, which would get me an additional 5 points. You need to stop right now, okay? A better philosophy is in your finances, fight for simplicity. That is why I use a very small number of credit cards, a very consistent number of bank accounts that I've used for a long time. I invest in very simple investments that anybody has access to, and I do it every single month consistently. That's it. I keep it really simple. Most of us end up asking these really overly specific questions as a method of procrastination. If I don't know the perfect answer to this one thing, then I have to wait until I get all my ducks in a row. Wrong. I think there's a different approach. I think that getting started is more important than becoming an expert. And too many of us get overwhelmed thinking we need to manage our money perfectly, which leads us to do nothing at all. Personally, I'd rather follow the 85% solution. I'd rather get it 85% of the way right and then move on with my life than dream about getting it 100% right, but get nowhere. For you to get started, there are 3 easy things I want you to do. First off, read my book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Get it from the library, get it from a bookstore, get it on Kindle, get it on audiobook, doesn't matter to me. I'll also link the first chapter in the description where you can read it for free. Second, while you're going through the book, make sure to watch the videos I make for you right here on YouTube because they accompany the lessons. They're made to work together. And third, download a copy of my conscious spending template and plug in your own numbers. That way you will understand how your spending stacks up to other people's. Once your money system is good enough, or 85% of the way there, get on with your life. Go do the things you really want to do. All right, on to mistake number 6, letting debt pile up. Now listen, I spend most of my money on credit cards. The difference is that I pay it off every single month. I use credit cards because they offer convenience and benefits like cashback, reward points, purchase protection, and extended warranties. The problem is that if you don't pay it off in full every single month, you are now in financial quicksand. The more debt you carry, the bigger portion of your paycheck is going towards paying off that debt, meaning the less you have to save, invest, and spend on other things. This can become very dangerous. There are certain couples I've talked to where they simply have so much debt that they can't get ahead. It's like going for a walk with a 200-pound weight vest on their back. It's really difficult. Nobody needs a guy like me to tell you, don't get into credit card debt. And yet, week after week, I talk to couples who ended up exactly there. I ask them, how'd you get here? And they will tell me, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Life got in the way, something happened, job loss, and suddenly I was trapped. I don't want you to do that. See, in the first quarter of 2024, the average American household has around $8,000 in credit card debt. If you only pay the minimum amount, assuming that it's interest plus 1% of the balance and a 28% APR, this is how long it would take to pay that amount off. And remember, $8,000 is the average amount of credit card debt. There are people who have a lot more than this. So just seeing what you're paying in interest shows how much money you are effectively wasting. That's crazy. And if you look at these numbers, you can see how much money people waste carrying credit card debt. Now, let me show you something that a lot of people don't talk about. Having credit card debt doesn't just force you to play small today by having to pay lots of money towards interest. It actually prevents you from growing tomorrow. Take a look at this example. All the money that you are currently paying in this example towards credit card debt, if you had instead invested that money, look at how much it would have turned into. You can see that credit card debt is a double whammy. Number one, it forces you to struggle, to be overwhelmed, paying tons of money towards this debt. But second, it's the opportunity cost or the amount that you're losing from not investing that money that's forcing you to stay small tomorrow. So what's the best thing you can do? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Pay off that freaking credit card in full every single month. To me, this is a non-negotiable. It's a no-brainer. If I can't afford to pay that credit card off in full, I'm not charging it. Interestingly, when I talk to people who are in credit card debt and I ask them about their financial behavior, some of them continue using their credit card, which means that whatever they're ringing up for $100 is likely to cost them $150 or more later down the road. And I ask them why, and sometimes they look at me point blank confused and they go, for the rewards, duh. This has happened multiple times. I go, are you kidding me right now? You're charging more on your credit card when you already have $28,000 for the rewards. It's worth 1 cent. And they look totally perplexed. Like, why wouldn't I want to get free rewards? Free. It's not free. In addition, if you have credit card debt, find a way to make extra payments and or pay off a little bit more. For most people, an extra $100 a month actually has a profound impact on how fast you can pay it off. You'll pay it off way faster, and how much interest you'll pay off. You'll pay way less interest. Remember, there's a limit to how much you can cut, but there's no limit to how much you can earn. If you have severe credit card debt, consider taking on a side job, start a side hustle, pay off that credit card debt, make it your financial priority number one. This is crucial because right now you're paying 28% in interest. That's crazy. I would rather you take that money and instead invest it where you can make roughly 7% consistently. Mistake number 7, getting an expensive car. Why are you freaks so obsessed with cars? First thing new parents do, gotta buy a 7-seat SUV. Okay, why? Grandparents are gonna come once every 18 months. We need to have seats for them. And then I go, okay, that's a very interesting analysis. That's so fascinating. Hey, why do you have that $78,000 truck? Oh, I need it to haul my stuff. Then we discover the statistics of how often people actually use their truck for the intended purpose. Oh, those are quite startling. More importantly, let's talk about the finances. When I ask people, how did you decide how much car you could afford? You know what they do? They just look at me like I'm insane. They go, it's all about the monthly payment, Ramit. Don't ever make a large purchase decision based on monthly payment. And remember, the new car smell, as much as I love it, wears off, but those loans do not. On top of the car payment, You got the phantom cost, which nobody accounts for, insurance, registration, gas. In my case, I used to have a $350 car payment. When you factored it all in, I paid over $1,000 a month. By the way, whenever I talk about this, a lot of people accuse me of being a liar. I go, listen, first of all, I don't need to lie, okay? This is my business. I can say whatever I want to say. I have no reason to lie. But if I'm going to lie, it's not going to be about my freaking Honda Accord car payment, okay? What they're really saying is I have never been to a high cost of living city, and that seems crazy. In today's world, $735 is the average car payment. There are a lot of freaks paying even more than that. I recently spoke to a couple on my podcast who had a total monthly car payment of $2,500. Are you kidding me? In fact, I can tell you point blank, when I talk to people who are in financial difficulty, it's always the same two things. First is their house. They spend too much on a house. Second is their car. They spend way too much on cars. And what's incredible is that they find it really, really difficult to imagine downsizing. And after the loan term finishes and the car is paid off, that is the magical golden opportunity for them to actually incur savings. But you know what they do? They trade their car in. In other words, after your car payments finish, you should keep that car as long as possible because you are effectively paying close to zero. That's the time that you're getting the major benefit. It's like if you're doing your last 2 lifts and it's really difficult for you, you push through. That's all the benefit right there. Same thing for your car. Once you pay that car off, keep it. Hold it for as long as you possibly can because financially speaking, that is the best time you will ever get. Of course, nobody listens to me. They simply go and go, ooh, that's shiny. I need a new feature, Bluetooth Extreme. And they trade in their freaking car. And what that means is they simply take on another loan, another loan, another loan. You're basically the car industry's best friend. Let me show you what I mean. Let's take that $735 average monthly car payment. Remember, this does not include things like insurance, gas, etc., and see how much you would have if you instead invested that money. $735 a month invested for 35 years, 7% rate of return, which factors inflation in. Please don't write me about that. Will amount to more than $1.2 million. You and your shiny Chevy Tahoe, was it worth it? Was it really worth it? So how do you know if you can afford it? Well, like any major purchase, you need to run the numbers carefully. Consider total cost of ownership. Cars and the phantom costs associated with them, like insurance, gas, maintenance, and more, are part of your fixed costs. And if you have fixed costs that are too high, it will affect you lower on the conscious spending plan. It means less money for you to save, less money for you to invest, even less money for you to have guilt-free spending. That is why so many couples come to me and they talk to me fighting about how much their partner spent at the grocery store or Target, but that has nothing to do with it. They don't realize that they spend too much on their housing and cars, and therefore they have no money left over. They just haven't made the connection. So you got to buy a car you can afford. This does not mean that you buy a car based on your monthly payment. Car dealers can simply stretch out how long you're paying them to lower that monthly car payment. Don't do that. Instead of looking at the monthly payment, the best way to determine how much you can afford is to use some ratios. Let me show you what I mean. If you use my conscious spending plan, your fixed costs should be between 50 to 60% of your take-home pay. Let's be conservative. Let's say 60%. Subtract your total housing. That's your mortgage, rent, utilities, all housing costs. Subtract your groceries. Subtract anything else left in your fixed costs. What's left over is how much you can spend total on a car. That includes gas, maintenance, registration, everything. Again, you can download my conscious spending plan and it will help you do these calculations for you. I'm going to show you right now how it works with some real numbers. Let's say for easy math, you take home $5,000 every month after tax. Your rent, utilities, debt payments, groceries, phones, subscriptions, they add up to $2,396 or 48% of fixed costs. So if you're trying to keep your fixed costs lower than 60%, that leaves you with $600 to spend on your car total per month. You need to subtract out the car payment and also account for gas, maintenance, etc. This is a really different way of looking at how much you can afford to spend. And working backwards like this is really useful to see what you can actually spend instead of just coming up with an arbitrary number. When you run these numbers and you truly understand the math, you will understand also keep the car for as long as you can, which will free up money to invest and often turn into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars over the long run. All right, let me know in the comments which of these 7 money mistakes you've made in the past and what changes you are making now going forward. Make sure you click that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my new videos. Now check out this video popping up on screen to watch more.